on the next episode of Spider-Man.
An upside of Hollywood's recent obsession with multiverse stories has been the return of obscure or forgotten offshoots of long-running franchises. Finally, there's a SpongeBob video game where you can revisit the universe from the prehistoric Bikini Bottom episode, where he stares at fire for 45 seconds. This was every 6-year-old's favorite. After basically jump-starting the trend, Across the Spider-Verse features cameo appearances from dozens of alternate universe variants of the web-slinger, from both comics and cartoons that haven't been seen in decades. I've even crossed paths with one myself, and yes, I did mean to be pointed in that direction when this photo was taken.
I love it when they don't look up.
Everyone tends to talk about the same 4 or 5 of Spidey's animated series, either the longest running or the most influential. So many get left behind in the discussion. I'm sure there's others that are still worth watching.
Look out!
You've run out of tricks, Spider-Man. The world is about to know your alter ego is...
There's been over 55 years of the Wall Crawler's adventures in this medium, so today I'll be looking at the one-season wonders, the forgotten experiments, and the late series rebrands. I'll give you a hint. 3 are called Spider-Man. I've decided to watch about 1 season from each decade from the 1980s to the 2020s. I did this over the course of a month, so thank you, God, for not making me a Zelda fan. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that I've already made a handful of videos covering Spider-Man cartoons, so I kind of want a fresh format to discuss them through. Perhaps something special, like an ego-boosting live performance. Welcome to my ego-boosting live performance. That's right, this video is a heavily edited version of my ego-boosting live performance of Spider-Man's Secret Animated History, a panel I performed at the end of last month at MomoCon 2023 in beautiful Atlanta, Georgia. I've been a panelist at the convention every in-person year since 2019, and this was the best one yet. I met so many kind fans, hosted my first discussion panel, forced many a pal to watch Clone High Season 2, because that's my personality, and saw loads of talented cosplayers.
Bird up!
Last year, I covered some of my personal favorite movies based on cartoons, so for this panel, the topic was a no-brainer considering what was going to be in theaters 1 week later, which, by the way, I loved Across the Spider-Verse. Not sure if I'd say it's better than the original just because it's part 1 of 2, but I was blown away by how it boldly experimented with clashing visual styles, how well the scenes with Gwen, Miles, and their families balanced dialogue and humor, and how it played with callbacks from the first film without repeating it. I know I want to do a follow-up review before Beyond the Spider-Verse drops, partially so I can attempt to live up to this thumbnail. Hopefully I'll have more than 10 months. For now, I wanted to polish up this panel, as I essentially prepared and wrote it to be a video performed live, recorded from the inside of a pyramid, apparently. Once again, I cut out a ton of stuttering, incoherent sentences, random noises I couldn't remove without distorting the audio, and the segment where I played the shocker clip from the 1994 animated series at full blast in front of a live audience. I just felt compelled to do it. I don't know what came over me. So sit back and enjoy this living proof as to why I don't do my videos in 1 take. Oh wait, that was actually a pretty good first take of that line. So, just to set the stage for everything, Spider-Man, he's faced some great challenges, some deaths, really terrible traumatic things for such a young person. And I'm kind of similar because I face enemies myself, like the clicking noise, and I also got a sore throat I got him doing the whole panel with. So when it comes to the Q&A, you might get a bit of, the answers might be, So, for those who don't know who I am, my name's Nick. I run the YouTube channel NICKtendo. It's NICKtendo on Twitter. You might know me from such videos as look back at Nickelodeon Magazine, movies based on cartoons, which was the MomoCon panel I did last year. And I also did a fantastic video that's totally real, not fake, on Teacher's Pet versus Bebe's Kids. Definitely a real video. As you can hear that clicking noise, that's my mortal enemy. He might be recurring throughout the panel, so keep an ear out on forces that are out of my control. It's time for the rules. We have a little quick informative video to introduce you all to the standards and regulations of this panel.
Welcome, everyone. Here are a few reminders to ensure that this panel goes smoothly. When someone's on the mic, we ask that you stay silent and give them the floor so that everyone can be heard on the recording for the viewers at home. There will be a Q&A section at the end. Save your questions and complaints for later. Please, silence your cell phones. But also, you can quietly use them if you get bored. I'm not your mom. Please say hello to the Snagglepuss. Say hello to the Snagglepuss now. Remember, there will be a test. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
So, we're going to be starting off with our first show, which is one of the few shows that's just called Spider-Man from 1981. It was created by DePatie and Frayling Productions. This was the first show where they became Marvel Productions, and the production company was known for shows like the Pink Panther and those early Dr. Seuss cartoons. Now, this show, it's just called Spider-Man. It's usually confused with Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, as those two shows shared a lot of design assets, crew members. What the difference is that Spider-Man, the show, was syndicated, and the other one was on NBC, and that ran for 3 seasons. Spider-Man, just Spider-Man, ran for only 1. This is just standard Spider-Man stuff. Peter Parker, he's going to college at Empire State University. He's working at the Daily Bugle, trying to keep his identity secret from Aunt May, who has the knack to always walk into his room just as he's changing into Spider-Man. Weird how that works. And he's trying to score a date. Yeah, I know, everyone is really excited about Aunt May. Me too. He's trying to score a date with Betty Brant. But one of the special things about this show is that it's also trying to balance Spider-Man having to deal with everyday Peter Parker stuff. So he's got to pay bills for the windows he's breaking down, and he's got to go to the doctor, but he doesn't want to reveal his secret identity. And these are some of the highlights of the show, some of the weird stuff, the wacky stuff, the fun stuff. And however, the ratio of Peter Parker stuff to Spider-Man stuff, it's like 20 Peter, 80 Spidey. And the Spidey stuff, completely off the walls, completely bonkers and bizarre. This dude fighting Easter Island heads. Mysterio is using disco music to hypnotize the entire city. Spidey's flying through space using his webs to thrust himself through the stars. And Spider-Man kills his best friend, Robbie Robertson, even though he's a robot duplicate, and also Robbie Robinson is introduced for the first time right as Spider-Man is about to kill him. It's some serious drama going on in this show. And the serious drama, it's kind of weird because you have episodes with Dr. Doom where it's like, Dr. Doom is going to take over the entire United Nation. He's going to hypnotize them. He's going to turn them all into robots. Next episode, Spider-Man's going to the carnival. He's going to fight a gorilla. And there's some original characters in this. There's the stuntman, as you can see on the left. He's a movie action star, themed villain. And there's also J. Jonah Jameson's nephew, the very famous Mortimer. Classic character. He's kind of like the beta version of Eddie Brock in more ways than one. And as you can see by his page on the Marvel Wiki page, Mortimer has made many appearances. He's quite the well-regarded character. A lot of this seems very exciting, very cool. Although one of the downsides is this show is very slow, moves very slowly, and a lot of the stuff is pretty one note. I appreciate that the efforts to humanize Peter Parker, but the stuff with J. Jonah Jameson, he hates Spider-Man. Aunt May, she hates Spider-Man. Betty Brant, she hates Peter Parker. She keeps going out with him though. Girl, find someone else to date. I would say this show, in the grand lineage of Spider-Man, it's kind of in between the 67 show and the 94 show. It's just like a base Spider-Man show that doesn't completely get off the rails like the 67 one does like later in its run. Although the production values aren't super high, this is one of those shows where there are only 12 music tracks and you will hear them in every single episode. You know, it's a little wacky, it's a little cheesy, and it definitely made me almost go to sleep sometimes, but it's very accurate to what Spider-Man was at its time. And I think, for a show in the early 80s when the standards for animation weren't very high, I think it's a pretty good effort. And plus, who can hate a show with episodes called The Sandman is Coming? The Sandman is Coming. Second show, here we go. We're talking about Spider-Man Unlimited.
That was a good one.
So Spider-Man Unlimited, this show has a really intriguing reason to exist. It was born out of creativity and a great idea, actually, no, I'm lying, contractual obligations. So, there was a couple ideas floating around for the concept of this show, maybe a continuation of the 1994 series, maybe a Spider-Man 2099 show, maybe an adaptation of the first 26 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man original comic. None of those happened. It had to be a different show with Spider-Man in the title. Batman Beyond came out like the same year while they were trying to develop this show, and that pulls some elements from the Spider-Man 99 book. So they couldn't do that, or else people might think that they plagiarized. And the Raimi movies used a lot of that source material, so that was off the table as those were being put into production. The alternative was to make a whole new show that kind of picks from elements of Spider-Man's history, but there are also more restrictions. There couldn't be more than one Peter Parker, because one of the original ideas for the show was Spider-Man goes to a world where that Peter Parker became Venom. But because of the recent Clone Saga, which was very, very infamous comic run at the time, that had two Peter Parkers, and there couldn't be two Peter Parkers. And Venom and Carnage, they needed to be in this. And the show started, I believe, in 1999 or 2000. You know what? For the recording, I'm gonna say the show started in 2000. Future-proofed the recording. And unfortunately, Fox Kids pulled it after 3 episodes. And it was because the show it was competing with in its time slot was doing way better in the ratings. So what show was it? It probably was nothing big. What was it? It was Pokemon. Okay, well, Pokemon was pretty big in the 90s. I'm sure whatever it was doing like a month or a month before, around that time, it was nothing big, nothing special. Oh, they were screwed. Just to give you an idea of what this show is like, what the basic premise is, I'm going to show you the theme song silently, and I'm going to commentate over every single thing that happens in it, beat by beat, because every single thing in the show, the intro lays it out very simply. All the lyrics don't explain anything. It's just Spider-Man, Spider-Man, over and over again. So here we go. Here's the theme song. I'm going to tell you guys every single thing that happens in it. All right, so there's a spider, it's electrified, and then there's Peter Parker, there's an explosion, and he becomes Spider-Man, and there's the cops, he's working with the cops. I don't really like that, not a big fan. Uncle Ben is dead. There's a funeral, it's really sad. Now he's Spider-Man, the Carnage and Venom, now they're going to space to counter Earth, and Spider-Man gets a new nanotech suit, and he's suiting up, he's doing some flips, and I don't really understand what this is. I guess it's symbolic. Oh, he's going to counter Earth through the spaceship as High Evolutionary, the Knights of Wondergore. There are animals that are humanoid, and there's a bunch of them, and there's humans and human animals in this place, the bestials, and they don't get along. And then there's the Green Goblin and the Vulture and Kraven, and there's the two, there's Revolution and the bestials, and Spider-Man's in the middle, and that's the show. That's Spider-Man Unlimited. Pretty simple, right? Yes. Yeah. So this show kind of reminded me of Rise of the TMNT, not only because it gave a lot of furry artists a lot of ammunition, but also because it's not supposed to be a new generation for Spider-Man. It kind of expects the viewer that they already have a baseline familiarity with the character. Maybe they already saw the 94 show, because it kind of remixes it, and it also has a lot of animal versions of Spider-Man's rogues gallery, like some of the villains, like the Vulture and the Green Goblin. They're anti-heroes in here. And obviously Spider-Man has the 2099 inspired suit with the cape. Not a huge fan of the cape. Whenever I see it, I think of the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse clips where Peter B. Parker goes, Spider-Man doesn't wear a cape. And I really like the look of this show. They use blacks and shadows really nicely. I do think that some of the characters are over-designed color-wise. Like, everyone's got 3 colors in their palette, but I really like the backgrounds. And the animation is pretty stable, really impressive compared to some of the other Marvel stuff coming out at the time. But it's not super exciting, but it's stable, gets the job done. Although there are some technical issues, like multiple times they show a monitor, and it's like someone was supposed to chroma key that in. Someone was supposed to use the green screen effect on that, but nothing's there. And I checked multiple rips. I checked Disney Plus. I checked some totally legal copies of the episode, and they both had the green screen, so something went wrong. The setting of the show is Counter-Earth, New York City. The humans live in slums on the ground level, and there's a human revolution with a lot of colorful characters that all get an episode to be developed in these short 13-episode season. I do not remember any of their names, but their episodes were pretty interesting. And I remember this one. This girl's named Karen because I thought this subtitle was really funny. The main villain is the High Evolutionary. You can tell he's the bad guy because he's covered in spikes. He has the knack of zooming in to a lot of conversations. His servants are the Knights of Wondergore. Some of them get developed. Some of them have interesting relationships with Spider-Man, like harassment. This show was made in 2000. Future-proofing. The Bestials, I think they got cool designs. Spider-Man meets a bunch of rejects because they're produced, as you might have caught a glimpse of, for like 1.5 seconds in that intro. I like that they got this cool kind of post-apocalyptic cyberpunk outfits. It's very, very Ninja Turtles-y, and I really like this platypus girl in Atlantic City. She's slaying, she's serving, she's on screen for 2 seconds, and the show covers some pretty deep themes sometimes. There's transhumanism with a robot that wants to break free of his programming and become a good guy. The woman that Spider-Man lives with, she's divorced, and there's a mystery surrounding what happened to her husband. And John Jameson,
My son, the astronaut!
The astronaut who flew into Counter-Earth, is leading the revolution. He actually has a character in this show, and he really wants the humans to win no matter what. And Spider-Man's kind of the mediator because he's half human, half spider. I like how they play into that. Although one of the downsides of the show, if you were paying close attention to that intro, there's a lot to take in, and the show does not service anything. Venom and Carnage are supposed to be like one of the main villains. They disappear for like 8 episodes. Early on, Spider-Man's like, wow, when I go to Counter-Earth, I don't have to be Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I can just be one. And then when he goes to Counter-Earth, he becomes Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I don't really understand what he was thinking, but okay. He's also like, oh man, I gotta get back to see Mary Jane. And then Mary Jane's in 1 episode. And we just keep seeing flashbacks of Mary Jane, of her smiling or in the photo, and it's like, dude, I do not know who Mary Jane is in this show. And to give her a character, you can have flashbacks to her. Otherwise, I'm not caring, and I don't care. I will say, I had a lot of fun with this show just because it was so different compared to a lot of the other Spider-Man shows. But I was really interested by how the idea of trying to create unity between the humans and the bestials, these animal creatures under the High Evolutionary. So I watched the show, and then a few days later, I went to the movies. And I saw Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So if you were paying attention to some of the things I was talking about, this kind of adapts some of the stuff from Spider-Man Unlimited. The High Evolutionary is the villain. They go to Counter-Earth. Instead of having just kind of this mishmash Saturday morning cartoon aesthetic, it's got this 50s, like a planned community kind of look to it. They actually go more into the creation of these animal-human hybrids with Rocket Raccoon and how it's kind of screwed up. And there's the general theme of bringing people together. And I feel like it executes a lot of these ideas a lot better than the Saturday morning cartoon. And, you know, it's a big budget MCU feature film, one of the biggest franchises in the world. So of course it's going to be high production value, but it was a really good way to cap off my overall Spider-Man Unlimited experience. And even though there's been some comics afterwards, and the show ended on a cliffhanger, the first show today that we're going to see end on a cliffhanger, it will not be the last, but it was very cool to see some of these ideas brought to a theater. And you know what? It was very cool to watch a show where Green Goblin quotes Ned Flanders from The Simpsons. I feel like we need to have that happen a little more, you know? The test is coming! I feel like the bad audio really elevated that sound effect. It's also making me regret putting these really loud, unbalanced sound effects in the presentation. There's only a few more, guys, all right? They aren't gonna play as well as I hoped. Number 3, we got Spider-Man, the new animated series on MTV. And this show was originally supposed to be inspired by Ultimate Spider-Man. Writer Brian Michael Bendis did a treatment and the first script, and you can see some concept art over here. But this show was ultimately created by Sony, Marvel, and MTV just as the first Sam Raimi film was coming out. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. They want to have their fingerprints on the show. So production was delayed for 2 months before they hired Morgan Gendo, known for Nash Bridges and Law and Order. Okay, I don't know where that came from. I think that just kind of happens whenever you mention Law and Order. Whatever, I'm gonna have to live with it. The animation studio is Mainframe Studios, and they're also responsible for Beast Wars, this Transformers show. Oh, this has audio. I wasn't expecting for this to have audio. I love the way this show looks, man. I love it. Me and my friends, we had this thing called Monkey Monday. We did it every Saturday because that's when we started it. I don't know why. And we'd always just post this clip in our Discord server. It lasted like 3 weeks, but it was really funny. Some of the animation today, you can tell where it's motion captured, even though a lot of the, just the Spider-Man action is hand animated, and that looks pretty good, despite some of the limitations, like the lighting not quite hitting a lot of the models exactly as you would like it. And I gotta say, if you just pause on any frame, it looks like someone wants to pee their pants. Like if they got their mouth open, not good for a freeze frame. And it looks like this game, I forget what the name, but Facade, it does look like Facade. Yes, that was the first thought, and I could not get it out of my head. In terms of the cinematography and the actual animation, not like, the modeling, I think it's a very interesting show, a great product of its time. You got some really interesting shots, the way they frame shots, like they do a ton of match shots. They really love their match shots. The Spider-Man action swinging around New York is really exciting, really fast, really dynamic. And there's also some Matrix style bullet time because this show has super Y2K vibes. It looks like a Dreamcast game with a cell shading. Spider-Man uses chat rooms to communicate. Peter Parker's like, have you heard of this thing called a waveform? Check out this MP3 on my laptop. I'm gonna pull out my Sony Ericsson, which every single character in this show has. They really got that brand synergy going on. And the show's a little adult. As you can see, that Spider-Man swears. There's a little bit of blood, a little bit of drinking. And a little more pop culture references. And I think in the long lineage of Spider-Man shows, this one stands out because it gets to be a little more mature. And that never really overshadows the storytelling. And I will also say that one of the downsides of it being on MTV is the episodes presented on iTunes or Disney Plus. Most modern places where you watch it, that's the production order, which is not the intended order. The On the Next Spider-Man segments are wrong. It was just kind of a pain to watch this show even on Disney Plus because you kept having to go, okay, I gotta go back to the Wikipedia, now back to Disney Plus, and only the last 2 episodes are in order, so keep a lookout for that if you decide to watch it. And the ordering is kind of confusing when it comes to characters like Electro. First episode, Max Dillon becomes Electro. 4th episode, Max Dillon is just a character in Peter Parker's class. He's completely normal. Next episode, where did Electro go? I guess he's back now. The show is kind of like a mature look at the Spider-Man experience as a human. You got Peter Parker, MJ, and Harry all attending Empire State University, taking some cues from the Sam Raimi films, although the way the characters end up by the end of the show, completely different, and some characters like Dr. Connors, completely different portrayals, and characters like Aunt May, and even poor old Uncle Ben, they're not even seen, maybe only referenced once or twice, like in this photograph. And there are some interesting new characters. Spider-Man works at Empire One, works with Indy, a bubbly reporter. She adds a little bit more energy into the Peter Parker side of the drama. J. Jonah Jameson, his stuff is flatlining. Not a good J. Jonah Jameson. He doesn't have the bite. He doesn't have the energy going on. And the MJ Spider-Man stuff, the will they, won't they, not really interesting. And man, that clicking noise is really annoying. Just gotta live with it. Just like how you gotta live with MJ being a damsel in distress. This is like her major role as a character. Super great. I love Media Made in 2003. Some of the villains, kind of a mixed bag. You got Shikata, a really cool moral-driven swordsman that wants to defeat Spider-Man on her own terms, even though she was hired. And then you got Russian dudes with jetpacks. They're not as exciting. Everyone's trying to monitor Spider-Man, including Kingpin, who's actually Michael Clark Duncan reprising his role from Daredevil. So more brand synergy. I love to see it. So overall, this Spider-Man show, I really dug that it gets to be a more mature, college-age Spider-Man, but I will say the visuals do a lot of the heavy lifting. That's kind of the reason why I kept watching, and not a poorly written show, but that's what grabbed my attention. And you know what? I can tell that the crew put a lot of care and attention into this in general. They actually did on the DVD. They have a Pixar-style bloopers reel, like they did for Bug's Life and Toy Story 2, and I really like that added detail. And the final episode is another show that ends on a cliffhanger. Spider-Man puts his suit away. He accidentally sends someone into a coma. You're gonna have to watch the show to find out. And he's like, Spider-Man is no more. And because MTV was like, well, we're moving away from animation, that was the end of the show. And Disney Plus was like, hey, you know what you should watch next? Cars. And I gotta say, not a bad chaser. Number four. We got Spider-Man 2017, Marvel's Spider-Man 2017, Maximum Venom. So this is the third season of the Marvel Spider-Man show. Season 1 and Season 2, I have both covered on my channel on YouTube. And if you've seen those videos, you'll know I'm not a big fan of this one. Might have called it the worst Spider-Man cartoon. Maybe use that to clickbait a couple people. Might have gotten people mad at me. I don't know where I stand in this community. But just so you know, if you have any grievances to air, the Q&A is coming up in about 20 minutes. So get your pitchforks and torches. I can see a couple people got some ready in the back, ready to go. I'm glad you all came prepared. This show is kind of different because it's 12 two-part episodes. So the episodes have great titles like Web of Venom Part 1, Part 1 of 2, and Web of Venom Part 2, Part 2 of 2. The format adds a lot of energy to the show. So the first one, Web of Venom. Venom is back. Max Modell, who is Peter's teacher, the leader of Horizon High, he decided to recreate Venom just in case, because he wanted to help the person that helped him. The reasoning is very vague, not very well explained. Max Modell finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man because he is really smart.
How did you know?
I am a genius, remember?
And they work together. He's kind of Peter's man in the chair, and they don't really get along, so there's a kind of an interesting dynamic there. And Dr. Connors is talking to this mysterious man at the end of the episode for a cliffhanger. And I looked in the credits, and it's the same guy that plays Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, in the credits. So I'm wondering if that's going to lead to anything. We'll have to see. Next episode, Amazing Friends. This is one of the team-up episodes that the show loved to do. You got one of the versions of the Hulk and Ironheart. Miles is working with Doctor Strange. You got Baby Groot. And I hope you all saw the one Guardians of the Galaxy, the animated series Mission Breakout episode with this specific version of Spider-Man. Because I was a little lost. So yeah, I do think that that's kind of a confusing element. If you're just, I'm a 6-year-old. I don't have Disney Plus. I only have cable. But the main thing about this episode is that Venom is back, and now everybody's Venom. Venom makes all these different versions of all the Marvel heroes, and you can buy them now at Target. And there's Venom bikes, and Spider-Man has to team up with Moon Knight, Mark Spector, and his repartee with Spidey. It's got a good thing going on, and Aunt May getting to have a relationship with someone that's not Peter, kind of a bright spot in the show where it's just action, action, action. Here's some more characters. Fourth one, Spider-Man Unmasked. The Rhino has been kidnapped. The Rhino is like a student at Horizon High that's mutated. He's kidnapped by Swarm, who has a underground monster league called the Underground Monster League. Max Modell is put on trial for letting all these villains into his school, not being very safe, but it's not really his fault. And Spider-Man has to go help him on his trail. He has to be unmasked, and it's creating a conflict with some of Spider-Man's friends that also had spider powers, but they didn't know he was Spider-Man. And it definitely feels like, we only got a couple episodes left in the show. We got to shove this stuff in. We got to wrap this thing up. And Max Modell, he has a very good performance at his trial. And it's pulled off by his voice actor, Fred Tatasciore, who I feel like if he grows the beard and goatee, he can pull off a cosplay. You know, it's pretty close. He got the facial structure. He got it down. My favorite part of this episode is that they cut to Hammerhead and his son or his nephew watching the Underground Monster League. And Hammerhead says absolutely nothing in none of these shots. He's just sitting there on the sofa, not moving at all, not eating his popcorn. And his son, all these reaction shots, very excited. Hammerhead. Second to last one, Generations. It turns out the mysterious guy that Dr. Connors was talking to, that was Green Goblin. That was Norman Osborn. I know, I'm just as surprised. So all the heroes get villains to work off of. Some of them, not the best pairing. Anya Corazon has to fight the Chameleon, who is disguised as her cousin, who we never met her cousin. We met the comedian like 20 episodes ago as someone who is in a completely professional setting. not the best writing. And it turns out Miles' dad was actually Swarm, the guy who can control lots of bees and was kidnapping people for his underground monster league called the Underground Monster League. And it turns out that in season 1, when a bunch of robots that attacked his neighborhood, which was, it was resolved, the robots were taken care of. It was very clear who the robots were being controlled by in the episode. Turns out he thought, oh, Miles, the Spider-Man, who is called Spidey in this show, must have destroyed the neighborhood. I gotta stop the Spider-Man. But however, even though this plot twist kind of seems like, that Into the Spider-Verse movie had a really interesting plot twist with Miles and someone in his family. We can do that in your show, even though it won't work for what we've already set up. It does give us this classic line. I gotta hand it to the writers. He does have the line, "My dad is bees." The action sequence in this last episode has some pretty good anime-esque action. They're really pulling out all the stops. But I gotta say, if you think, oh man, does the rest of the show look this good? It's even worse on this probably projection screen, because a lot of these shots are really dark. You can't really see them. When they do slow motion, I know slow motion is very difficult to animate, but they just kind of slow it down, the frames chug, and they put a filter over it. Never look good. They've been doing it for 3 seasons. It is really easy to rip into a lot of this stuff. And I'm sure the animators did not have a lot of time to make all the assets they needed for this episode. I remember when I did the second Marvel Spider-Man season review on my channel, I did a lot of research into the development and how they outsourced the animation, and did not hear a lot of good things. And I'm not gonna explain it here. You can go watch that video when you're done with this panel, or done watching this panel on the YouTube version. But you know what? We got Venom rats, so kind of a good, just a small price to pay, I would say. Maximum Venom, our last special. We meet Venom's sisters. I didn't know Venom had sisters, because I'm not a big comics guy, but Venom has sisters. There are probably toys of them too. Venom also rides a giant dragon, this Shadow the Hedgehog looking dragon, and MJ is finally going on a date with Peter. She was introduced in a couple episodes, but you know what? End of the show, gotta have MJ in there. And Max and Spider-Man, they come together, they get on the same page, and turns out that Venom was actually hiding inside Max. And that's why it's called Maximum Venom. That's why it's called it. The final note of this show, what the entire thing has been building off of. Peter Parker, poor kid from Queens. Now he's working at this big school for geniuses, working with Tony Stark, and he's creating WEB, the Worldwide Engineering Brigade. And you know what? All his friends, he's come together, they're finding a plan for something to do after graduation. It's a pretty good note to end on. I mean, it would be. This is an actual ride at the Disney parks that they're cross-promoting with the end of the show. Everything that they were building up to is to advertise this theme park ride. A lot of this show, a lot of the things just kind of reminded me of other Spider-Man cartoons, like Miles is the same voice actor as he does in the new video games coming out. And this was coming out around the same time as the Tom Holland movies, and those being one of the biggest franchises in the world. It's a shame that it didn't have the time and energy to look a little better, to move a little better. And a lot of these episodes, they were just throwing things against the wall, trying to shove stuff in, and having plot points that don't quite get resolved. Like the lizard is a big part of this season, and he just disappears by the end of it. Unfortunately, having the part 1, part 2 treatment didn't really lead to a lot of the episodes feeling like one cohesive hour-long story. It was like, here's part 1, Spider-Man is gonna fight a villain, and then part 2, Venom is here. I gotta say, one of the reasons why this is the best season is just because it's the shortest. It was only like 12 instead of 26. Looks like there's even shorter here, but there's one more thing I want you guys to know, and the audio cue might not play as expected, so just remember, the test is still coming. Don't forget it. Our 5th and final show of the late afternoon is Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Oh, wait. I actually put the wrong Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. We're actually talking about the preschool show. We're talking about Spidey and His Amazing Friends. And I gotta say, this show has, typical Spider-Man setup, but for a age-down preschool audience on Disney Junior, you got Spider-Man, you got Ghost Spider, which is Gwen Stacy, and you got Miles Morales, and he's called Spin in this show. You know what? I agree with you. Miles is called Spin because he has his signature move, the Spidey Spin. It is only brought up in this short from the Meet Spidey and His Amazing Friends short series, which is a separate thing on Disney+. And in this show made for toddlers, I think it is pretty confusing that they put this vital piece of information separate from the show. I'm watching the whole thing. I'm in my 20s, man. I'm like, why is he called Spin? When do they explain that he's called Spin? But for some weird reason, they don't really go into the origins of why he's Spider-Man in this show. You know, Uncle Ben is mentioned once, but I don't know what happened to Uncle Ben in this show where Spider-Man is 10. It's kind of confusing. I think they should touch on that in the 3rd season. You might be saying, this show is made for little babies. What is a big baby like you talking about it? Well, you see, there's kind of a vacuum for this kind of content. You know, a lot of people, they are talking about this show. They got their lips sealed. So obviously I can step in and give you the review that the Spidey and His Amazing Friends deserves. So a lot of this show, shows like PJ Masks, this is kind of, that was the template, you know? I was the originator of this show. But what I really like about this show, watching it from someone as esteemed and professional as myself, is that it's kind of like a child-proof version of a regular Spider-Man cartoon. Like, there's only 3 heroes and 3 villains, maybe for toys or like budgetary reasons, I don't know. The heroes feel like older siblings, and the villains feel like schoolyard bullies. They're committing some really heinous crimes. The Rhino, he is disturbing the local carnival. Dr. Octopus is turning a small octopus into a giant octopus that is not really destructive, it just kind of sits there. You know, a lot of these, there are minor inconveniences, like the Rhino stealing someone's lunch. But I mean, I guess it's better than like terrorism, which is what they would usually do. And the Green Goblin is the worst of them all. He is trying to steal a book from the library without checking it out first. I hate this guy. The public library did nothing wrong. This is a moment where I want you all to answer a question for me. You can call some answers out. What do you guys think is the big conflict that brings all the heroes and villains of the show together? What do you guys think it is?
9/11.
It is not that. I don't think anything is gonna top 9/11. It's not COVID either.
Maybe the other 2 villains help Rhino disturb a carnival?
Ooh, that seems pretty intense, but no.
Is it climate change?
It's not climate change either. It is Hulk's birthday. Everyone wants a slice of his birthday cake. And you know what? I dig it. This is the biggest event of all of the episodes I saw. Everyone wants a slice of Hulk's birthday cake, and I gotta give them, it's a pretty good gag. The cake just gets flung over everywhere else, and when they open it up, the cake is completely destroyed, and Hulk's like, okay, I'll eat this. Even compared to like Counter-Earth, this is a very unrealistic depiction of New York City. Everyone, they see all these spider people swinging around, they're not like, look at that freak. It's more like, I love Spider-Man. Come on and help me, Spider-Man. And no New Yorker would ever have that treatment. Completely unrealistic in this show for toddlers, I will say. There's one episode where the Green Goblin, it seems like he might have turned over a new leaf. Spoilers for Spidey and His Amazing Friends. The Green Goblin does not turn over a new leaf. But he saves one cat from a tree, and one of the New Yorkers is like, well, I guess the Green Goblin's a good guy now. That's all it takes. What I do think, this is a little personal suggestion. I think they got to introduce Chibi J. Jonah Jameson to this show. He can be like the antagonist that can't be beaten. Teach kids that journalism is the real enemy. And I gotta say, the parents, terrible in this show. Hitting the table really helped that, They let all their 10-year-olds roam around New York. They're just walking around and at night sometimes, unsupervised. What are they doing? Aunt May is the worst of them all. She got her AirPods in and she doesn't see the giant Green Goblin dinosaur coming her way. Aunt May, look out! And she doesn't even notice the giant Spider-Man lair called the web quarters, you know, pretty good pun right there, emerging from her backyard. She's like out shopping or something. All this high-tech Spider-Man gear. This is not my Spider-Man, you know what? I think that Spider-Man should be broken, both in terms of his bank account and every single bone in his body. But you know what? there's some positives I like about this show too. Some of the environmental design is pretty creative. The Green Goblin's funhouse has some really creative mirror mazes. They put the camera in some really interesting places in this CGI sprawling New York City. Like Miles is Behind, that's one of them. I probably could have picked a better screenshot, but you know, first one I put down in my notes, first one I timestamped. Patrick Stump, a Fall Out Boy, actually does the theme song for the show. A big fan of that caricature. Yes, it does look like Fortnite Fall Out Boy. He also does some extra songs for the show too. There's a transformation sequence where all their suits just kind of, it just appears on top of their body with like nano machines.
Like Venom?
Yeah, like Venom! And there's a theme song that plays when this happens, this transformation sequence, and it goes, Spider-Man, go Spider, spin! And they do this in all, I think they did it like 10 times in all the episodes I watched. But there's sometimes where they'll play the song, but the episode's only about Spider-Man, none of the other spiders. So they'll play the song and it goes, Spider-Man! There's a break. Break keeps going. Break keeps going. And then the song ends. But you know what? I gotta say, overall, even though it's a little by the numbers in terms of the storytelling, and I take issue with how realistic this Spider-Man TV show is. Although I will say, in season 2, the subtitle is Glow Webs Glow, and now their suits glow. You know what? I reserve my judgment. Maybe that season really elevates the show. I could be wrong. Could be wrong. But you know what? I enjoyed what I saw of Spidey's Amazing Friends. I enjoyed plots where the Rhino kidnaps a spider monkey from the zoo and tries to turn him into a sidekick. I appreciated that kind of content. And the way this series kind of tries to make kids feel like, you know what, they could be Spider-Man. It reminds me of this comic that's been reposted online many a times. It asks, what if you were Spider-Man? So picture in your mind, what if you were Spider-Man? What would happen? You would be dead. You're no superhero. Alright, let's finish this off by ranking these series. At the bottom we have the 1981 show, for managing to make such faithfully bonkers plots make me feel so sleepy, with flat characters and a slow pace. I think I broke Disney Plus watching this one. Next is Spidey and His Amazing Friends, as the toyetic and overly child-friendly attitude was only so entertaining before I felt like I had seen everything its first season had to offer early on. However, in season 2, they really shake up the formula because now their suits glow, so maybe I spoke too soon. Maximum Venom takes the middle spot for using Venom to finally anchor the show in the relationship between Max and Peter at Horizon High, but all the team-ups and wrap-ups shoved into this final season drag it down, especially when some plots don't get resolved. In second place is MTV's The New Animated Series. It was cool to see a reinterpretation of the Sam Raimi cast, soaked in a dated, yet still captivating Y2K style. I'm glad that we finally got an ugly Peter Parker on TV screens across the nation. Really made me feel seen. I just wish I cared more about his central relationship and the drama that stems from it. Finally, in first place, we got Unlimited. It was a nice change of pace to explore the surprisingly fleshed out furry city of Counter-Earth's New York. There's a lot of dynamics or isolated stories that feel a lot more modern than even the recent cartoons I covered, though some were still underwhelming and I wish it got to finish its story. Cars is mid, just in case you were wondering. So many of these cartoons felt like comic miniseries with their own tones, presentations, and goals. When adding to the legacy of such a long-running character, it can be refreshing for an iteration to just be its own thing and not the definitive version, because that's where I think these oddities excelled. Hopefully Spider-Man can still be friends with someone who used to look like that kid who Rhino almost killed in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I forgot who the other person in that photo was. Oh, it was the Snagglepuss! Everyone say hello to the Snagglepuss. Oh, that rapscallion. I actually don't know how I got into that precious photo. I'm kind of scared now. But while I sort through that, it's time for the test. You ready? Yes. All right, everybody. Question number 1. What is Spider-Man's secret identity?
It's what?
Norman Osborn.
Oh man, is someone gonna say it?
Ben Riley, duh.
All right. So I keep hearing a lot of Peter Parker. Let's see if you guys are right.
Raven for the sort.
All right, the answer is, you guys did it! You passed the test! You win! When I said the panel was gonna be interactive, I was not lying. So here's some of the art that I got. I got my friend Rosa to draw me and the Snagglepuss. This was not a commission. They were like, I'm gonna draw you and this character design. They're called the Snagglepuss. All right, I'm not gonna say no. They're just gonna be in the panel now. And CAFSA, at CAFSA on Twitter, they did the wonderful panel art that you might have seen on my socials and at the top of this panel. And my friend Josh, he did the voiceover. So now it's time for the Q&A. So thank you guys all for coming out. And if you have any questions about Spider-Man or YouTube or anything else, please come on over to my friend Zane. He is holding the mic and ask away.
Where would you rank Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends? Not Spidey and His Amazing Friends, but Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends.
So I was considering putting the show on in the panel. But then I watched the first episode and it wasn't really grabbing me. It definitely, I would say, maybe better than Spider-Man 1981. But as an overall product, I can't quite say. I haven't seen a lot of it. But it definitely seems cut from the same cloth in terms of like the production values. Definitely seems more like this is the team version, like kind of Scooby-Doo inspired a little bit.
What's fairly on par in season 9?
The video's gonna be done when it's done. The video's season 9 is coming out when I finish writing and editing the audio and editing the video. But thank you for your question. I will say I don't only have enough time to do like one big hour-long video in the winter and in the spring and the summer. So my one for the winter was the ranking every show of 2022 video. So Fairly Odd Parents is my next big project. That beast is gonna be done. I'm gonna kill that thing, and I'm gonna kill that video.
Okay, I'm sure this gets really well explained in the show, but in the Spidey and His Amazing Friends like lore/canon, who is making all the technology that these 10-year-olds are using?
I think they invented themselves.
Right.
Like, there's a bit of like some STEM stuff in there. Like Peter Parker is using. They use quote unquote their smarts and science skills.
Okay.
To save the day. Actually, Spidey saved the day is the official technical term.
Okay, so the 10-year-olds are making like super suits.
Yeah, I mean, use your imagination. It doesn't have to be completely realistic. Who would criticize the show for not being realistic? Well, thank you for your question. Yeah. So I'll take any more Spidey and His Amazing Friends lore questions.
You want to play around with Uno?
Dude, I ain't got time to do Uno. We got to be out here in 6 minutes. But thank you.
Wanted to ask, 2 years ago you promised a Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce.
And you're coming at me in real life? Get back in the comments section. Did I promise it?
You said on Twitter.
I said okay, you know what? Pre-pandemic, that was pandemic. That was a different time, all right? We all said things we regret and might not do. There is actually a segment in a video I might do this summer that does involve Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go. I cannot believe I said that all in one go. But yeah, keep your eyes peeled. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell to be reminded of. See, guys, this is what happens when you put a YouTuber on stage. Now they're gonna plug themselves in real life.
I have another question in regards to the very complex lore of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Do they ever go into the implications of what it's like for like young kids to be like bitten by radioactive spiders and have their DNA just completely transformed so they have like spider powers?
That was something I was thinking while watching, is that all of them seem aged down. Or at least it's hard to tell how old they are. I just kind of said they were 10-year-olds because that's like the default age for your animated protagonist. It's like 10, not quite like halfway through elementary school and middle school. But I would say they don't really talk about that. And I feel like they should. They showed there's some drama to be found there that I'm sure all the 5-year-olds would really be interested in.
I have to agree with you there.
Yeah, thank you.
Where did you put the giraffe in the sneezing powder?
The what?
That's a Spider-Man the Electric Company reference.
Where did I put that giraffe in the sneezing powder?
Oh, dude. That dude's topping the list. You know, Electric Company Spider-Man, better than any other Spider-Man. He does not even need to speak to educate. He's so powerful. I was hoping that would get more laughs, so that was kind of
I was laughing on the inside.
You know what? I appreciate it.
For all the Spider-Man shows you've seen, who are the villains you think have never been given their fair shake? Who do you think is like the one with the most potential, but it's never been done right, or could just be done better, more prominent?
Well, I really liked Green Goblin in Spider-Man Unlimited because they keep hinting at what his true identity is and how he ties into Spider-Man's backstory in the show. And because the show didn't get more episodes, he just shows up at the end, quotes Ned Flanders, and that's all we get. So I definitely I feel like a lot of these Spider-Man shows that ended years and years ago, they probably won't get continued because Disney's like, well, why not just create a brand new Spider-Man show, which is what they're doing with Freshman Year, the Disney Plus show that I hope comes out. I hope we get to see it. I hope it gets. I hope it doesn't end on a cliffhanger like half the other shows I talked about today. But yeah, I feel like there's potential for Unlimited and some of its other characters and some of its villains to be explored, especially like in the modern day where cartoons can be a little more upfront about covering more emotional topics.
Okay, so I remember I was watching a lot of like your Fairly Odd Parents videos.
Oh, thank you.
Do you feel like the overall show, do you think it aged well?
The overall show?
Yeah.
I remember when well, I feel like in terms of like is the overall show as good as I remember, or has it held up from like a cultural perspective?
I'd say about both.
That's kind of complicated. In terms of like a cultural perspective, there's a lot of stuff here and there. I'm like, oh, that's kind of iffy. Oh, I'm not a fan of that. But I feel like a lot of those early episodes, they had heart, they hold up, and some of the middle seasons are pretty good. They're all right. Okay. And I feel like it gets less culturally charged as you get into like the HD stuff, and they just start throwing in new characters just to spark it up. So spark it up. Oh. I wonder what that's referring to. As a show, I think a lot of the show holds up. I think it's like, I don't know, maybe 60% good overall. So that's where I'm gonna leave it.
Why are you so cool and hot, man?
Whoa! I feel like I answered that question myself. I mean, if you want a man who will talk about Spider-Man for 58 minutes straight with a sore throat and the clicking noise, you got your man right here.
Why do you have an amazing voice?
Oh, thank you. Why do I? Yeah, whoa. The first Sonic mention of the panel. That's impressive. I almost made it through. Actually, no, wait. I did mention Shadow the Hedgehog. No!
Spider-Man, we're at it again. This time with 50% more Spider-Man. Oh, yeah. Not quite a bug, not quite a man. How do I break out from the Spider-Man clan? I wanna be proud, I don't wanna hide. Don't trap me in a cup and put me outside with all those other Spider-Men. We're at it again. This time